and I took Lake City by quote-unquote $1 billion in the play-in game.
On the North Idaho Prepcast, we're all about that North Idaho life.
Man, you talk about Wallace and what they've been able to do this year. Quietly just being, the steady stalwart up north in District 1. They've been dominant.
From Bonners Ferry all the way down to Grangeville, we tackle the biggest stories in North Idaho sports.
This Genesee team is for real. We know what we saw last year. They're, I think in the driver's seat to repeat.
It's the North Idaho Prepcast with Ryan Scaggs. That's right. Welcome in another edition of the North Idaho Prepcast here on the IdahoSports.com YouTube channel, Facebook page, and X account. It's been a while since we've done one of these. Most of the time we're here weekly, but with the holidays and Thanksgiving and all that fun stuff, schedule has been interrupted slightly, and with state football championships as well. We actually did record a show last week, but it was all the way back on like Monday, so it may feel like it was a while ago. I hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving. My name is Brandon Baney. Let's bring in our North Idaho expert. It is Ryan Scaggs. Yo, what's up, Scaggs?
Not much, just living the dream. I mean, yeah, we did record it. It feels like it was like 2 months ago. I don't know. Like the month of November kind of felt like we got to like today's November like 38th. But yeah, it was a good holiday week, and we did the all North Idaho teams and all that stuff, and which was pretty cool. I saw that Max ended up actually putting our list in the Bonner County Daily Bee, which was super cool. So that was kind of neat to kind of see that we got some notoriety there, which was nice.
Yeah, and I was going to say, you did a great job with those. I saw several schools sharing those as well, specifically Wallace and I think Kellogg come to the top of my head there from the Silver Valley. So I think it was a wildly successful endeavor. Of course, you've been doing it for 4 years now. It's just slowly been building up. And now I think it's something that people anticipate and look forward to each year as well.
Yeah, so. I mean, it's been awesome, and the response with that, with the kids, and I mean that's why we do it. Was just it's a more comprehensive list than just the all league teams and things of that nature, and doing research to actually get the right kids on the list and on the team, and we do it for them. And yesterday was National Signing Day, and we saw Sawyer Hewitt signed with the Vandals, which is awesome to get an 8-man guy playing some Division I football, which we've seen a number of dudes in the 8-man ranks, statewide sign with D1 teams over the last few years. I think that's just the trend of athletics in the state of Idaho getting the recognition that it deserves, especially at the 8-man level. So we're not going to obviously dominate this prepcast going on the soapbox about 8-man football now the season's over, but small school athletes exist, and they're real good. I mean, we're going to talk about, guys like Dave Clute during this basketball season. When we do our boys breakdown, I believe probably next week, but we're going to talk about the girls at length today. But there's a whole lot of great athletes and great teams in North Idaho, and especially at the small school level, not just the larger school kids. We've seen a number of girls go on to play Division I basketball from North Idaho. I mean, the likes of like Utah State, University of Wyoming, UNLV. I mean, we've got players around District 1 and District 2, and this is their opportunity to get noticed and shine and get some notoriety.
Yep. So you kind of outlined it, Ryan. Today's show is going to be mostly girls basketball focused. We do have our girls basketball season previews still up on our website at IdahoSports.com in case you didn't get to read it over the Thanksgiving holiday. Most of what we said still applies, so you can check all of those out. We had our preseason coaches polls where the coaches picked in each league how they thought their league would shake out. And then we also did have our first statewide girls basketball coaches poll of the season that dropped on Monday, if you want kind of a statewide view of how teams are looking early on. But for this show, we're going to reference kind of those preseason polls and go kind of district by district or conference by conference for girls basketball and give the ladies some attention because they definitely deserve it. Some of these teams have already played 5 or 6 games, which is ridiculous, neither here nor there. But Ryan, are you ready for our girls basketball preview extravaganza?
Let's get it going.
Okay. And friendly reminder, if anybody is watching in the chat at the IdahoSports.com YouTube channel, Facebook page, or X account, first of all, like and share if you could. That helps everybody else find it a little easier on replay. If you're on YouTube, smash that like button. All right, that's the terminology that's used. And you could also throw something in the chat as we're talking about girls basketball, and we will of course throw it up on the screen. Like, here's Joel Richardson from the East Idaho Prepcast on X Beard Crew. Yeah, I need a shave. My beard's getting a little Grizzly Adams over here.
I finally trimmed mine at the end of November there, and I don't like to get too scruffy, but we got a little grizzled there as the playoff run went on. We had the playoff beards going.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, from Beard to Boyd, that's where we will start our girls basketball season preview. Boyd, as in first-year head coach Stacy Boyd, comes over from the Washington area. He ran for 25 years. He was the CEO and president and a coach for Spokane Elite Basketball Club. He is now the head coach at Coeur d'Alene High School, so that's where we'll start our season previews here for girls basketball. 6A Inland Empire League. It's just 3 teams. It's Coeur d'Alene, it's Lake City, it's Post Falls. In our preseason coaches poll, Coeur d'Alene and Lake City tied for first. How does that happen? Well, one coach decided not to vote and each side picked each other. Basically what happened there. You could figure out what happened in the dynamics of the poll from there. Post Falls picked to finish third. Coeur d'Alene and Lake City pretty famously played in the state championship game last year, Ryan. It was a scenario where Lake City had gotten the best of Coeur d'Alene in the regular season a couple of times. Coeur d'Alene then won the district championship and won the state championship over Lake City as well. A lot of talent departed from both those teams. You think of like Avery Waddington from Lake City, who's now playing at the University of Montana. You think of Tegan Colvin from Coeur d'Alene. She is at the Division I level. I believe UNLV is where she went. And so you do have some returnees, but you also have some big question marks for these two teams.
Yeah, and I mean, just a shout out to Avery too, who's off to a great start as a freshman for the Grizz right now. She's playing lights out, which is awesome to see. This conference is interesting because I mean, it's some newer coaches. Obviously, I think the tenured coach now is in their second year, if I'm not mistaken, or third year maybe at Lake City, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe I'm wrong, but Post Falls has a new coach this year. Mike DeVilbus is a name that you would recognize if you followed college basketball in North Idaho for any time in the last couple decades. He had a long run at Lewis Clark State College. Phenomenal coach there for the Warriors for a long time. I believe he's now, he had a couple of years off. He was the athletic director at Lakeland for a while, now is back on the sidelines there. But you kind of look at the top two teams. I think, the coach's poll is fairly accurate with Lake City and Coeur d'Alene being at the top of the heap there, just based on returning talent. It's going to be interesting. I mean, they've had a few games under their belt already. Lake City picked up a win over Mountain View. So did Coeur d'Alene, the Boise schools. The two teams I look at 6A to be favorites for state championships between Owyhee and Boise. Kind of took care of work over the North Idaho schools last week when they came up. But will either of these teams challenge for a state championship again? I don't know. I hope I'm proven wrong. I think Coeur d'Alene right now has the slight edge as far as returning players, and that Viking team is got holes to fill. But they've got probably the best nucleus that returned after what graduated last year. Lake City had a very good roster last year. Let's not be mistaken. But losing Avery and Sophia Zufelt, Coeur d'Alene had to replace Tegan Colvin and Maddie Mitchell and, a number of cast of characters that team had as well in their state championship run. It'll be competitive once again. I think we won't really know what either of these teams can do. They're getting their feet wet. Could they be more competitive later on down the road? I think so. We're going to see what they're able to do as they head to Boise this week. And they're going to play, I believe, Eagle, Rocky Mountain, and Meridian, and playing those three schools this weekend. So we should see a little bit more of what North Idaho has to offer as far as talent with the North Idaho schools making the trip south.
Yep. It's going to be interesting. The dean of coaches, David Pratt, in his second year at Lake City. Right. He was a rookie last year. Two new coaches at Coeur d'Alene and Post Falls, as you highlighted. One returning all-conference play, all-league player from last season. That is Kelsey Carroll, the senior post for Coeur d'Alene. And she's going to be critical because Coeur d'Alene's relying on a couple of younger players in the backcourt. Brooksley Colvin, just a sophomore. She started as a freshman last year. We'll see how she operates without big sister Tegan
Yeah.
stealing the spotlight.
She's got game. I mean, let's be real. She's
Yeah.
got a number of D1 offers. So as a sophomore, can she play to that quote unquote hype? I think so. I think, give her a little bit more chances this season in that lineup. Kelsey Carroll's one of those players that we saw her in that state championship game. She was a difference maker on the court for Coeur d'Alene. I think that's really what cinched the state championship. As good as Tegan was, it was the consistency of Kelsey Carroll the last couple games of the state tournament for the Vikings is really what turned the tide for them for that state championship. So getting her back is going to be huge, and her leadership on the court. I mean, she's a great leader, and it'll be interesting to see how the team kind of rallies around her and her energy, because she's a high energy player, and it'll be a good conference to watch this year.
Yep. Okay, let's move on to Class 5A girls basketball. Inland Empire League, a 3-team affair in years past, now a 4-team affair as Lewiston drops down from 6A to 5A. So you've got the standouts of Sandpoint, Moscow, Lakeland, now joined by Lewiston. That's how they were picked in our preseason coaches poll. Sandpoint 1, Moscow 2, Lakeland 3, Lewiston 4. Lakeland was the team that got to state last year. And oh, by the way, real quick, Sean Kane in the chat from the East Idaho Prepcast, he was broadcasting that championship with me last year, courtside. Ryan, Kelsey Carroll was our player of the game for that 6A state championship game last year for Coeur d'Alene. Okay, back to the 5A. Despite Sandpoint and Moscow being 1 and 2 in the preseason poll, it was actually Lakeland that got to state last year and finished top 4 against Pocatello in that third place game at state. Landry Simon is back. Karsten Kiefer is expected to take a step forward. Sandpoint was the juggernaut, right? They won the state championship just 2 years ago. They really missed Aaliyah Strock last year. She injured her knee pretty early on in the season, still recovering from that knee injury, and then she's going to play for the College of Southern Idaho down in Twin Falls. But what it allowed was Sandpoint to play some really young players, particularly 2 freshmen, and Brecken Meyer and Jordan Tomko. They have been playing basketball all spring and all summer, and I think that development is why Sandpoint was picked number 1 in our preseason poll.
Yeah, and I mean, Lakeland being third is kind of, puzzling to me as far as Moscow's going to be good too. They return a lot of pieces from last year, but I think Lakeland's a team to keep an eye on. Obviously, I know they've got a new coach too, but that's a group that they returned, some nice pieces from that team that finished 4th at state last year. Sandpoint and Lakeland is who I had penned going 1 and 2 in the conference, and I'm never going to count against Coach Love. That guy, he's a great coach, great guy too. Just a great person, and I enjoy listening to his podcast that he does with coaches from around the state of Idaho and from around the area. But that nucleus, with Tomko, like that you mentioned, and Brecken Meyer, like that's a good group. There's some talent there. They returned, the youngsters getting the time early on in the season, I think really helped the maturation of that nucleus of that team. They're going to be good for the next few years. There's some other nice role players that are going to fill in. They're going to have some size inside, but they're also going to be able to shoot the lights out. That Sandpoint team is a dark horse at 5A. I know that there's a lot of hype around some of the East Idaho teams, but I really look at Coach Love and what he's able to do with scheme and coaching. Like that's a really good group. You look at, the run of the North that they've had in basketball the last few years. Sandpoint was a large piece of that a couple of years ago, winning a state championship. And, you look at their schedule and kind of the ones that you start putting an eye on already, is it, Sandpoint, Timberlake? That's going to be, a heck of a ball game. But Sandpoint, Coeur d'Alene, Lake City, they've already taken care of business against Post Falls. This Sandpoint team is going to be legit. They really will.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see how this league develops. Landry Simon is the reigning IEL MVP, player of the year last year as a junior at Lakeland. Moscow, I think, gets a nod because they've got 2 6-foot posts inside, which is fantastic. Jackie Williams and Jessa Skinner. That's going to be hard for a lot of teams to counteract. Lakeland, Simon does have a little height, and Lakeland's got some tall players as well. And so it's just going to be fascinating. And then you have Lewiston, who's dropping down, but Lewiston, I think, is in a tough spot. Their only returning all-league player, Reese DeGroot, actually went across the border to Clarkston High School. So she plays for the Bantams now, which is going to be tough. And then last point on Sandpoint, Sean Kane from the East Idaho Prepcast was broadcasting with me 2 years ago when Sandpoint defeated Shelley in the state championship game, you'll recognize this name, Demi Driggs. She was a key player as a sophomore 2 years ago. She is now in her senior season, another player to keep an eye on there for Sandpoint. So Ryan, I'm really thinking the last 2 years, me and Sean Kane have been broadcasting at state, and whatever tournament we've been at, a team from North Idaho has won, right? Sandpoint 2 years ago, Coeur d'Alene last year. Sean, I'm already going to lobby for it. Let's do the 2A tournament this year and get Grangeville that title finally.
Well, now 3A, yeah. I mean, I'm 3A. With you on that one. Yeah, Coach Barger and her group. I mean, I saw they took a loss to Ryrie, but I wouldn't put a ton on that one. Like, there's, they've already got a win over a tough, Coal Valley team, and I don't want to skip classifications too much, but there is some depth in North Idaho right now in girls basketball.
Yeah, that was bad on me. That was not being a good point guard. Let's backtrack real quick to 4A, then we'll dive into 3A.
All right, you're trying to push it too far up the court right now.
Yeah. Okay. Real quick, we're going to rewind it back to 5A. Here's Max Oswald, our colleague from the Bonner County Daily Bee. By the way, Max, you crushed it with the winter sports previews, which is just fantastic. Demi Driggs was the Daily Bee Athlete of the Week. 15 points, 12 boards, double-double in that win over Post Fall.
He's going to have many more of those this year, too. I mean, Demi's going to be lighting it up.
Yep, for sure. Sean says 3A. Yeah, Sean, 3A tournament. I'm lobbying for it already. See if we can't get Grangeville. Yeah, see if we can't get Grangeville that title. Okay, let's talk 4A. Intermountain League, cozy affair, just 2 teams, Bonners Ferry and Timberlake. If this league was a little bigger and there were multiple bids available to state, even a half bid, I think both teams would have a decent chance of getting there. Timberlake is going to come in as the favorite. They deserve to. They've won this conference the last several years. They return 2 all-conference performers in Josie MacArthur and Diana Nelson, but they also bring back Malia Miller, who was a fantastic player as a freshman, missed her sophomore year, all of last year with an injury. She is now back for her junior season for Timberlake. And then you look at Bonners Ferry. They had the league MVP last year in a freshman, Taryn Bateman. She's now a sophomore. So the last 2 league MVPs in this league have both been freshmen. A lot of star power. These teams basically tied at the top of our preseason coaches poll.
Yeah, and I mean they're both quality clubs. I mean, like you said, if this league was bigger, you could see both of these teams playing in the state tournament pretty simply. I mean, just looking at what's returning for both clubs. But I will say this, though, Timberlake, with their roster and what they've got back with getting Malia Miller back, I mean, she could have been one of the better players in the state in their classification last year, and she was out the entire season. And they still, had a really solid season. This, in my mind, Timberlake, Sandpoint, they're probably the 2 best teams in North Idaho right now. And I mean, if you look at just production on the court and what they're able to do, those are 2 very, very good ball clubs. And Timberlake, I have as a favorite at 4A, to win it all. Like, not just win league, but I would pick Timberlake to challenge for the state championship. I mean, I know it's way early and we're making our early picks and prognostications, but this is a team you absolutely need to keep an eye on. You cannot sleep on Timberlake, especially if you let them get up on an early lead. The way they play defense, I mean, they put teams away. I mean, they shut the door on you really early, and then they make you play from behind. That's a group that plays extremely tight. They've played together for a long time, and they're extremely well coached. That I like Timberlake a whole lot.
When Malia Miller was a freshman, Timberlake did get to the state championship game before they fell to Snake River. Last year's best of 3 district championship series went all 3 games. Bonners Ferry took the first game, then Timberlake had to win the last 2 with their backs against the wall just to get to state. So this is going to be fun. We won't get to see them play each other until January 18th. It's going to be a lot of non-conference, a lot of score comparing, and then they'll actually meet on the court, and we'll finally be able to decipher just how this thing is going to shake out. All right, let's go 3A hoops. Sean Kane, East Idaho resident and homer, has to note that Malad is off to a hot start, certainly, but in terms of North Idaho, Central Idaho League, this is Grangeville's deal. To me, the more intriguing question is who takes second place in our preseason coaches poll. We had Grangeville, obviously, number 1, followed by Kellogg, Priest River, Orofino, and then St. Mary's. So let's talk Grangeville first, and then give me who you think will finish second among that quartet of teams. But Grangeville, I mean, holy smokes. Michelle Barger in her 10th season leading the Bulldogs. We talked to her in an off-season interview earlier this summer for the North Idaho Prepcast. They bring back the conference player of the year in Madeline Green. She is a 6'2" nightmare inside. Not only that, they have Adelaide LaFay, 6-foot senior. So they go 6'2", 6 foot underneath. Not many 3A teams are going to be able to counteract that height. And then if that wasn't enough, they have Karis Barger and Addison Vanderwall out on the perimeter as well. I mean, this team is loaded for bear.
Yeah, Karis Barger is one of those players too. I know that they use this comparison for talking about Ashton Genty, but a rolling ball of butcher knives. That's Karis Barger on the defensive end of the floor. I mean, she is absolutely relentless. We watched them. I got to watch them in person when they played Clarkston, which ended up, finishing in the top 3 in the state of Washington at 2A, which is a very good team. Karis Barger was all over the floor in that game. I mean, she took on in that game, she had the responsibility of drawing the state player of the year in the state of Washington in 2A from Clarkston, and she held her own. I mean, I think she limited her to under her season average. But I mean, that Grangeville team, you get to return your entire starting 5 from a team that was really good last year, and you get another year under your belt playing as a team. This Grangeville team is going to be legit lights out, and I look at them absolutely as my favorite to win the conference. They're a dark horse. I would pick them top 3 in the state and in 3A right now. If the season ended today, which we've got a whole lot of time in front of us, but this is a team that realistically you could be seeing play Saturday afternoon inside the Idaho Center. Your microphone's muted, by the way.
Thank you. Had to cough off air there. I really think Grangeville could have won the championship last year. No disrespect to Bear Lake, who beat North Fremont. I think if Grangeville is playing Bear Lake instead, I think Grangeville wins that matchup, but they lose to North Fremont 43-42, where North Fremont scores the tying bucket with a second left, and they get the foul call, the and one. They make the free throw. It is what it is. I think Grangeville is on a mission this year, higher purpose. And I think, you talked about Timberlake, Maine, maybe being the best team from North Idaho. And that may be true in terms of if Grangeville played Timberlake. I think Grangeville has the best path to actually winning a championship this year. I think there will be more roadblocks potentially at the 4A tournament for Timberlake than there are potential roadblocks for Grangeville. But man, it's going to be an exciting season for the Bulldogs. You mentioned it. They've already played. They went on that road trip south. They played Coal Valley Christian, and then they went to Mountain Home to play Ryrie in that meet in the middle game. Ryrie won that by 5. Again, second game in 2 nights for Grangeville early in the season, and they had to travel a significant distance. So I don't put too much stock into that. It was a very close 5-point loss. It's going to be really fun to see this team develop. But let's talk about who takes second place. Kellogg, Priest River, Orofino, or St. Mary's. That's how the coaches saw it in our preseason poll, but I'll tell you, as I was compiling the ballots, the answers were varied and diverse. And so it really could be any of these teams.
I'll tell you, I like number 2 right now, Priest River. I think Priest River is a team to keep an eye on. As far as athletic and the way that they're able to play, that's a team that I would look at as a dark horse in that conference. They're obviously not, the same level as Grangeville in my mind, but I think very realistically, they could get the second bid out of that league and find their way into state tournament.
Yeah, Priest River basically starts 4 seniors and a junior. Lizzie McCracken is the point guard. She's kind of the straw that stirs the drink a little bit. Aaliyah Jensen inside the junior center will be important as well. For Kellogg, they have been the second place team the last couple of years in this league. They are relying on a freshman and a sophomore in the backcourt, Bella Schillereff and Jordan Stutzky. If those two can develop, maybe Kellogg can surprise by the end of the year. I'll tell you the team I like. I like Orofino. I look at them on paper and I see tremendous all-around athletes like Riley Diffin and Livia Johnson, who contribute in other sports for the Maniacs. Caitlin Curtis, 6'2" junior, one of the few players in this league that can go toe-to-toe with somebody like Madeline Green from Grangeville. And so I think Orofino is going to be kind of a sneaky team there.
That's a good pick. I mean, I don't want to go based off results so far this season, but yeah, I mean, that's a bold prediction, and if things can progress for that Maniac team, I think that could bode well for you. I think there's a little bit more maturation within that team. They've got to gel a little bit better. As the season goes on, and once they hit the league schedule, I think is where we're really going to see what type of team that is, because they took a few lumps already. But that's it. That's a team that definitely could be sneaky.
Yeah, a couple of tough losses to Prairie and Lapwai, who we'll talk about now, because those are kind of Team A and Team B at the top of the White Pine League over in the Class 2A ranks. Our preseason coaches poll for the 2A White Pine League looked like this: Prairie 1, Lapwai 2, Kamei 3, Kendrick 4, Troy 5, Logos 6, Clearwater Valley 7, Potlatch 8. Here's how I see it. I see it as kind of a top 4 and a bottom 4. Those top 4 teams, Prairie, Lapwai, Kamei, Kendrick, all bring bona fides. Kendrick was a 1A team last year and a really good 1A team. They move up a level. And then the bottom 4, Troy, Logos, Clearwater Valley, Potlatch, I think could all be described as rebuilding in some form or fashion. So to me, there is kind of a clear delineation. But which team do you like the best out of that top 4? Prairie, Lapwai, Kamei, or Kendrick?
I really like Prairie. I really do think this Prairie team is going to be very good. I think Kamei is going to be deceptively competitive too. They've got a lot of good athletes, good players in that group too. The one thing in the bottom 4 that didn't make a ton of sense to me, Clearwater Valley, I think is going to be better than people are going to give them credit for this year. I look at Clearwater Valley; they could have themselves a pretty decent season and find them, maybe on a 4 line going into the district tournament. I mean, that's not out of the realm of possibility at all. But I do see that I think that there's more of a 3-team top, and then there's the dividing line. I think Kendrick's got a little bit more to prove. I know that they slipped up with Salmon River, a very good Salmon River team. I know you'll talk about that in the District 3 Prepcast, but Salmon River is going to be legit. They're my champion pick at 1A. I think Salmon River could win it all this year. I will say this though, that group is, new coach, kind of a little bit new style. There's some of the same characters, but they did graduate a ton. I mean, they did graduate, some of their firepower from last year's, tournament team that we saw have a great. I mean, that was a great group. Let's be real. But I think it's going to be Prairie, Lapwai 1, 2, 3. I think is Kamei, and then 4, 5 is going to be interchangeable between Clearwater Valley and Kendrick.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of potential for those teams. Storylines for Clearwater Valley, working with a new head coach for the second year in a row. Their coach from last year, Shelby Cloninger, took the Kamei job. She went up the road a couple of miles to take over a Cubs team that is very good after Brandon Skinner retired from that post. So Sky Wilson will be coaching the Clearwater Valley girls there. Actually, that's her second year, and Shelby Cloninger actually was coaching the Clearwater Valley boys last year. So now she's coaching the Kamei girls. Best player in the conference, I think, could be Emma Krogh from Kamei. She is a fantastic 2-way player. Obviously, the Schumachers from Prairie will have something to say about that. Lapwai did lose quite a bit. They always just seem to plug and rebuild. Josh Layton Jr. in his second season. Skyland Picard and Junie Picard, kind of the players to watch there. Kendrick did lose a lot to graduation, and they lost their coach, Ron Ireland, who had been there a long time. He retired off into the sunset with the 1A state championship last year. Blair Moore in her first season as the coach there. And then, they do bring back Haley Anderson, but they've got to fill in the reserves behind those starters that graduated. A team I would keep an eye on the bottom half of the standings is Potlatch. I was kind of surprised they were picked 8th in the preseason coaches poll. For the last several years, Potlatch has been more of a volleyball school. That's not a bad thing. They've been awesome at volleyball, but it has impacted basketball a little bit. They do have some of those volleyball athletes playing on the team this year, like Catherine Burnett and others. And I think athletes are just good, especially at this level. So I would expect Potlatch to maybe finish a little higher than they were given credit for in the preseason poll. But overall, man, this is going to be a fun league, and that district tournament is going to be fire.
Yeah, no, it's going to be legit. That district tournament, I mean, we always talk about it. I think we've said it for the last probably 4 years now. It's as good as a state tournament. I mean, if you look at when you get to that, semifinal round, those are state tournament games. And, so if you're finding yourself getting bids out of the White Pine League, I mean, you have earned your way into that 8-team bracket at state, because that thing is an absolute meat grinder. There's no easy nights off in the White Pine.
All right, let's go to District 1's Scenic Idaho Conference in the Class 2A ranks. This one, who knows? Lakeside and Wallace were tied atop our preseason coaches polls. They each tied for first. Genesis Prep was picked third. Clark Fork picked to finish fourth. The Wampus Cats, long the dominant power at the 1A level. They have moved up to the 2A. And kind of like in volleyball, they're going to have to find their footing a little bit playing against significantly larger schools. Clark Fork is not that far over the 1A, 2A line. So they're definitely one of the smaller teams in the state in terms of overall numbers. Last year, Lakeside and Wallace met in that epic district championship game. They had split in the regular season. It was as evenly matched as it could be, and Lakeside jumped out to a hot start, and Wallace never really recovered from there. And so Lakeside ended up winning the district championship last year. They bring back Kylie Wolf, Kimberly Pluff, some of those outstanding athletes. Wallace brings back, they lost Bethany Phillips. They bring back the other two Phillips sisters, though. Or excuse me, they lost Brittany Phillips. She was the MVP of the league last year. They bring back the other two Phillips sisters, Bethany and Kylie. Kylie missed all of last year with an injury, and I think having both of those Phillips girls could move the needle a little bit in Wallace's favor. But then, Genesis Prep beats Wallace at the Silver Valley tournament a couple weeks ago. And so,
yeah, I'm high on Genesis Prep. They've got the secret sauce right now. And I'm going to take Genesis Prep as the upset team out of this conference right now.
Wow.
I think the athleticism is there. I don't know what's going on with Lakeside, if there's, some sickness or injuries or whatever. I saw they had a game postponed, but Genesis Prep, I just look at that group and they're scrappy as all get out. And if they play hard in basketball like they did in volleyball, a lot of those same athletes coming over, and if it translates to the hardwood on the basketball court, that's a great group of athletes they have. They may not have the size that Wallace has down low. But that's a group that can, they'll put you through, 32 minutes of heck. They will challenge you the entire time. And I just think that there's so much chaos within this conference. You get them into a district tournament situation. If you can play defense really well and you can wear a team out on the floor and just give them fits. I don't know what their depth is like, but I know that they've got some players. And I think that Genesis Prep is going to surprise some people this year in conference play. I think Wallace is going to be very good too. Don't get me wrong. I think it's going to go Genesis Prep, Wallace, Lakeside as far as the finish goes. But I hope, they prove me wrong.
Yeah, Genesis Prep won the volleyball title earlier this fall. First time in school history that they advanced to state. A lot of those same athletes are playing basketball as well. Lakeside did have the one game postponed. They were going to play Lapway. The reason that game got postponed, Ryan, is Lapway's gym. Somebody from that boys team was dunking too hard. They
shattered the backboard. Yeah.
Okay. The backboard got shattered, and so that game had to be postponed because they didn't have a hoop to play on. So
can't play on one end. Yeah. No, that's they could have gone down to the Pioneewas and played that. Come on, the old Lapway gym.
Yes. On that note, though, they are scheduled to play. Let's see, because I think it was maybe they've just made up the date, so we'll have to update that. But yes, Lakeside and Lapway will be playing soon, or just played. I'm still.
The boys played last night, and Lakeside I think had a 20-point win. But that's going to be. I that conference is. I think the top three teams there, it's every bit as competitive, I think, as some of the counterparts statewide. So, District 1 is coming up. I think they're getting their up and comings now with talent and level of play. It's definitely translating now, and they're having, some up years, which is great to see.
Yep. Okay.
And getting that true bid to state too. That's also huge.
Yes. No more of this half bid crap. That's just Lakeside had to play in that play-in game last year and dominated. So, okay, let's talk about 1A girls basketball. Let's start with the White Pine League over in District 2. Kendrick leaves. It creates this void, kind of, because Deary also has been a very good team the past couple of years. Deary actually got to state last year and won the third place game. I was on the call for that on IdahoSports.com. Kendra Keene in her 18th season on the Deary sidelines, which is just fantastic. Now, they did lose Araya Wood and they did lose Kennedy Kirk, but I tell you what, they bring back Kaylee Wood, who I think could contend for Player of the Year in that conference. Madeline Proctor is a good player as well. To me, the real X factor is going to be Genesee is dropping down. Where do the Bulldogs fit into this mix? In terms of the preseason coaches polls that we conducted, it went Deary 1, Genesee 2, St. John Bosco 3, Nez Perce 4, Highland 5, Timberline 6. So let's start with Deary and Genesee at the top here. How do you see that shaking out?
I think they've nailed it in my mind. I think St. John Bosco is going to be more competitive than they're getting credit for. There's a whole lot of pieces coming back. Yeah, they got a lot of pieces coming back. Genesee, though, has some youth that they've got some young players that they're super high on too coming in to this season. I mean, there's a nice little nucleus coming back from last year on a team that had a winning record. Deary, I think, is the team to beat. I just look at what they do, the coaching, everything about that program just screams that there's going to be some success this year. I know that they lost two very, very, very dynamic players from last year's team, but there's still some really nice pieces coming back in a team that got third at state. They learned how to get the wins at the state tournament where it mattered. That matters. And you come in with that group and look what they're able to do. And, I mean, they're going to have a target on their back. I think Genesee is going to be very hungry coming down a classification to get some big wins. There's talent on both those rosters, but I do see Deary 1, Genesee 2. St. John Bosco, I think, is going to be a thorn in the side and probably steal a win against one of those top two teams this year at some point.
Yeah. So players to keep an eye on. We talked about the two from Deary. For Genesee, Miley Greaser inside. Chloe, the older Greaser, she's gone. Miley Greaser inside, Sydney Banks on the outside, Greg Hardy, veteran coach at Genesee. His son Garrison used to broadcast for us. I saw Garrison just got engaged recently as well. Congratulations, awesome. Garrison.
That's great to see.
I wish he was still broadcasting for us, but he lives in Alabama now, which is about as far away from Idaho as you can get. But anyways, Coach Hardy at Genesee is always a good coach. I really like this St. John Bosco team. These players, I feel like, have been there forever. Sarah Waters and Julia Wasmuth and Rachel Sonnen and Noelle Chimelik. I feel like they've all been there like for 10 years now, which means they've been high impact players since they arrived on campus. They're all seniors now. And not only that, they've got more freshmen coming in. Katie Beckman and CC Remackle were two that coach that coach Alyssa Wemhoff identified as players to watch this year. So I think St. John Bosco, I'm with you. I think the Patriots are going to be really good.
Yeah,
Highland,
it's going to be very competitive conference. Yeah.
Yes. I did just want to point out two last things. Highland may have the best overall player in the conference in Haley Click. A lot of coaches have told me she's going to be one to keep an eye on as the season goes along. And then how about Timberline? The first time in 3 years that Timberline is going to have a girls basketball team at the varsity level. Julie Jared is going to coach them up. And, they're just trying to establish a culture. I think that's great that Timberline had enough girls for a varsity team this year.
Yeah, and you always and you look at like Nez Perce. That's a team that always seems, once you get to district tournament, just loves to throw a wrench in it. Like they always show up, and then it seems like they either upset somebody and force like one of the top teams to play from the backside of the bracket or something like that. It's just a competitive league. It's fun. I mean, small school basketball. It's a balanced league this year. I think with Genesee coming down, it kind of changes it a little bit. I mean, losing the state champ, I know probably gives a sigh of relief to a lot of those teams in that league. When they saw Kendrick go away, they're like, all right, we got a chance now. I think that there's a realistic like top three there that could look and say, hey, this could be our year to get to state.
Yep. Nez Perce, first-year head coach Casey Ralston, Aubrey Lux, kind of the player to watch there for the Nighthawks, certainly. Okay, and let's wrap up with what I think is going to be the funnest, the most fun, the most fun race of any this year, simply because I have no idea. It's two teams. It's Kootenai, it's Mullen for the North Star League Championship. Court of Christ is going to play boys basketball. Not enough girls to play girls basketball, which is interesting because they did play volleyball earlier this fall. So you would think some of them would play basketball. But anyways, so it's just Mullen and Kootenai. Last year, it was a 2-team league, Mullen and Clark Fork. Clark Fork won the district championship. Kootenai didn't even have enough girls to play varsity basketball last year. Well, I'll tell you what, not only do they have enough players, but they've got like 11 that are ready to go. Head coach Alyssa Learman in her 3rd season is very excited about the potential of this group. It is going to be, 9 players in total, 7 freshmen, 2 8th graders. I love it. It's all diaper dandies.
Yeah. I mean, and you look at, there's going to be, how many 8th graders are we going to see in that conference this year with those 2 teams? You almost have enough for a starting 5. So there's going to be a lot of youth in that league, and good for Kootenai to get that lineup out. I think that's huge for that program. We've seen them struggle in so many sports with enrollment and getting participation numbers and all that stuff. And if Kootenai can find their way into the play-in game, that's awesome for that group of kids if they get the win. I think they've got the edge right now over Mullen just based on numbers. They're high on some of their players, which is cool to see. But give me all the chaos. I love it. Like you start throwing 8th graders in the starting lineup and let the youngsters rip, man. Like let's see what they can do.
Yep. I'm really excited. And then for Mullen, they do return, Ava Blankenship was an all-league performer last year. She will be probably the best player in the conference this year, although maybe one of these youngsters from Kootenai will step up. I was very impressed. I got to see Kootenai's volleyball team play at the district tournament. Brooklyn Charles. She's got to be 6 foot maybe as a freshman. I think she could have a big impact on the conference this year as well. But and like from exact opposite ends of the spectrum, Alyssa Learman in her 3rd season at Kootenai with all freshmen and 8th graders. Sherry Lights at Mullen, 30th year on the sidelines at Mullen, a Mullen lifer, and we love it.
Yeah, well, that's awesome.
So that is the landscape in girls basketball in the state of Idaho. We've given you a little taste of the players, the coaches, the storylines, the teams to keep an eye on throughout the season. We will do the same for boys basketball next week. You might be wondering, hey, where the heck are the boys basketball previews on IdahoSports.com? We're working on it. Okay. Through the weekend, we're going to be putting them onto the site. And then the goal is by Monday, all of the previews will be there ready for you to consume. We are working on it as we speak. So keep an eye out for those boys basketball season previews. Hey, wrestling has started as well. Yes, the Idaho Mat Chat Prepcast will be coming back. We're still hammering out the details on that, but it will be our weekly wrestling only IdahoSports.com Prepcast. We usually do it live Tuesday nights. More details to come on that. We are bringing back the wrestling rankings this year as well. And my man Al Fontes is working on his exhaustive statewide wrestling preview as well. That should all be coming in the next week and a half. A lot of stuff coming down the pike here at IdahoSports.com. I know you're a big wrestling buff, Ryan. Competitions start this week.
It actually started last night. Lakeland got a couple big dual meet wins. They beat the brakes off a couple Spokane schools. Beating West Valley, 81-6, and then they beat Central Valley in a duel 70-9. Some big wins. Peyton Sardina came to mind. Cash Lund, 2 guys that we've talked about ad nauseum in football. They're getting it done on the mat too. And that Lakeland team, what looked very young, they could be very good in the 5A this year. So it'll be exciting to see how things shake out in wrestling. And Al and that crew, they do such a phenomenal job, and we're so lucky to have Al Fontes. If you're a wrestling fan, he's the best in the biz. I mean, let's just be honest. Like he puts in so much work and so much energy, and he shows up. I mean, he goes to all the big events. He's got his eyes on, every match. He seems to be like the encyclopedia of wrestling in the West Coast. And, you could just drop a name and he'll probably be able to tell you his stats and who he beat in the, semifinals at the random tournament over Christmas break. Like that's Al. But yeah, North Idaho wrestling is going to be interesting. I mean, Post Falls with the new head coach. I know that, Pete's going to still kind of be around the program, but they've got a new leadership at the top, and Coeur d'Alene's going to be bringing some nice pieces back that, you're going to have Al will break it all down, but North Idaho is going to be super competitive in wrestling this year. It's going to be exciting to see.
Yep. As Al always likes to say, I've been looking at the data. He's always, man, his mind is like a supercomputer up there when it comes to wrestling. So that is all coming. Stay tuned to IdahoSports.com. Coaches polls, scores, schedules, basketball, wrestling. It has started. And of course, all these great prepcasts like the North Idaho Prepcast. Ryan, thank you so much for hopping on and doing this. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
All right. Well, for Ryan Scaggs, I'm Brandon Baney. Enjoy the weekend, everybody. Enjoy the competition. We'll see you back here next week for another winter sports preview edition of the North Idaho Prepcast on IdahoSports.com.